How would you like to pay a lot less in taxes legally? Well, my guest today, Sally Peterson, is a global citizen. She has residencies in many countries, and she is taking advantage of the tax structures and the tax laws in a legal way, the same way that the elite and large corporations do. And she's going to tell you how to do that. It is a really compelling episode. It has me thinking, and she just explains it in very, very simple terms. So I know you're going to get a lot of benefit out of this. And remember, please subscribe to this podcast, because when you do, it allows me to get more guests like Sally that can help you and help the entire audience grow their business, their health, and their wealth. Enjoy. On today's episode of the ThriveMore podcast, I have the pleasure of interviewing Sally Peterson. She's a speaker, business and life coach, but more importantly, a global citizen. And we're going to talk about what that means. Sally has lived in 5 countries, having traveled to over 45 countries, and she has multiple residencies and dual citizenship, legally reducing her taxes to low single digits, owning companies in real estate in various countries, and having multiple bank accounts around the world. Now, that's not a spy movie, and it's not something that, again, is illegal. It's a very legal approach to doing this. So in addition to being a certified life coach, Sally Peterson is uniquely qualified to help business owners become global citizens and legally reduce their taxes to 0 or single digits to protect their assets and what they've worked so hard to build. So with that being said, Sally, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Roger.
Yeah. This is going to be cool. This one's going to be really neat. I want to dive right in. And if you can start off just by explaining, what is a global citizen?
So my opinion of a global citizen is somebody who has the freedom to live and travel around the world. And a lot of people think, well, I have one passport. So I'm originally from Canada. So my Canadian passport gives me the advantage of traveling to several countries without needing a visa and things like that. But as a global citizen, I have multiple citizenships and residencies. And then that way, not only can I travel on various passports, which then allows me other countries to travel to visa-free that my Canadian passport doesn't, but it also gives me the opportunity to live, work, invest, and do other things in more countries than just my home country of Canada.
And how did you start down that road? How did you decide, you know what, I think I'm going to be a global citizen?
Well, it didn't really I didn't think of it that way. Where it really started in the earliest times was I was in high school. I probably was around 16 years old. And it must have been winter in Canada because I hate winter.
Sure.
And I do remember I was with a group of my friends and we were outside at school. And I remember saying to them, I said, I don't think my parents are my parents. And they're like, what? I'm like, I think I've been switched at birth. They're like, what? And I said, no, not literally. I just said, I don't feel like I belong here. I just have this feeling in me that I'm not meant to live in Canada for the rest of my life. And, we all kind of laughed a little bit about it. And then I kind of forgot about it for many years and got married, had a baby, all that kind of stuff. And then that feeling started coming back. It's like, I'm just not meant to be here. And so that was kind of one part of it. And then another part was probably, and I didn't know that it was going to bring me to where I'm at, but I got audited from the government on my taxes. And I thought, no problem. It's fine. I know that the governments do random audits, like a lottery ticket. You randomly win. And I had no problem with it. I said, that's fine. Here's all my stuff. And I had vacation property that I rented that was down in Costa Rica. So I claimed all my income, all my expenses, all my stuff. So did everything right. So I wasn't worried at all. And then they come back and the auditor said, well, we're going to accept all the income, of course, but we're not going to accept any of the deductions and receipts, which I sent from my property management company. So they weren't even my original, they weren't mine that I'm, trying to use. And then they said, so we've redone your taxes And because the audit that we did this year was from your taxes 3 years ago, we're also charging you late fees for the last 3 years. So I got a nice bill for that. And it
Yeah.
just made me angry because I thought I did everything right.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to like you accept my income. Obviously, I'm going to have expenses.
Sure.
And so then I just thought at that time, I said, all these big companies pay very little taxes. And I'm going to figure out what they do because this is BS and they're not getting my tax money anymore.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of then, and then a couple years after that, a number of personal experiences that happened. And I just said, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm moving.
Yeah.
I am leaving North America. And then I first moved to that property that I had in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And from there, that kind of that started it. And that was back, I moved in 2011.
Wow. And you've started multiple businesses, it sounds
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
And what have been the challenges of starting multiple businesses in multiple countries? Like that doesn't seem simple.
Well, I mean, it is, but it isn't. I mean, starting your first business, even in your home country, isn't always simple, right? Because
Sure.
we don't know what we don't know. So
Yep.
I had a construction safety consulting company in Canada, and that was my first time learning business and all of those types of things. So when you have a base knowledge, I find it's not as challenging to do it again. Obviously, then dealing with taxes is a bit more challenging, but that's why we have accountants and tax people in that country. Because even, I wouldn't even with my business taxes and things, I don't file them in Canada, even when I was living there. And so,
Yeah.
you do have to learn a little bit more about some of the local rules and laws and things like that. But I don't find it overly challenging. I think it's that first time that's the hardest. And then being open to know just because I do things like this in Canada doesn't mean it's going to be the same in Spain, Costa Rica, Mexico, or wherever somebody is going to be living and moving to.
But then you not only have the challenge of, different tax codes and different business policies, you have the cultural differences as well in those. And so please, if you could speak to, Sally, tell us about the cultural differences when you've lived in these various countries opening businesses, specifically relating to opening businesses.
Well, you have to like really kind of get to know what that culture's like. So, for example, in Spain and some other countries, it is still, and it depends on the type of business you're doing as well. But in Spain, like the siesta in the middle of the afternoon is common still. Some businesses won't do it. Like if you're in kind of the tourism type industry, then obviously you're not closing down. Although, I mean, even if you open up a restaurant in Spain, a lot of them will close for 3 weeks in August because that's their vacation time, and they don't care that it's tourist time.
Yeah.
And so, you've got to play with that a little bit, but it's knowing how they work, what's important to them. Some places are driven by money and will work more and will work harder and will do more to make more money. And then in some countries, they don't care. They come in, they're good. They'll be like, I'll do my job, I'll do it well, but I'm not staying longer. I don't care if you pay me more. I'm not working hard. I like it. They're not money driven. And so then it has to be, if they're not money driven, which is fine, then what is it if you need them to get to do certain things? What is that? And some of them it's more like they want to be treated like family. Right? They're part of the team. They want to be treated like the team. They want to know that, sometimes the emergencies happen and you're going to be okay with it. Of, you know what, go ahead, take time off, do what you need to do, just try to make sure what they're working on gets done and to have more of that flexibility. And I think generally people and companies since the pandemic are more flexible with that because we realize that in some cases that we don't have to be in the office to get work done.
Sure.
Right. Or if they're freelancers and they're working from home, that as long as the job gets done, like for me, I don't care when somebody's working on something. If I've hired them and I said, here's the task, this is what I need. It needs to be done by X date. I don't care if you work on it at 9 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. Like
Sure.
for me, it makes no difference. It's the job is done. It's done right. It's done good. It's great. And to have that. So it's getting to know what kind of those cultural differences are, knowing the holidays, because some countries have a lot of holidays, and knowing that they don't work, and sometimes those holidays are days in a row, not just it's a long weekend or it's a
Sure.
Tuesday off. It could be 5 days that's their normal holiday, and
Yeah.
they take that time off.
Wow. So if somebody listening says, hey, I want to become a global citizen, or at least start a business in a different country because I want to lower my tax burden, and taxes continue to rise, how would you advise them on selecting a country? Like if they're, especially like the first one, okay, I'm going to do this for the first time. Is there a country that people are usually, I've heard Belize is one, but I don't know if that's true, but
It is one, but it's not one I would really recommend.
Yeah. So how do you go find, what is the best country to start with and why?
Well, there isn't one best country. So
Okay.
it's not an easy answer. And so what we need to look at is the type of business that you're running and how you're getting paid and where you're living. So those are the three things, because you can open up or even move your company to another country and stay living within the United States if that's where you want to stay, and you can still reduce your corporate taxes. So if we think of like Nike, Amazon, Google, a lot of them started in the US, but they have their headquarters in Ireland, Liechtenstein, and different countries, because then the corporate tax rate is lower, even though they're still living in the US. So you don't have to move necessarily. Okay. But so we look at that, and then we look at, is there a tax treaty between the two? And depending upon how you get paid. So for example, we had a client come in who said, you know what, I'm going to move everything to Dubai because Dubai has 0% tax, which is changing. They've made it now 9%, which is still quite low. There's a few free zones, but they're still phasing that out. So, and I said, okay, well, you want to go to Dubai? That's great. Well, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm an influencer on YouTube. So I get paid by YouTube. And so I'm going to open up my company in Dubai and they can pay me in Dubai. And I said, well, that in theory, you think because it's 0% sounds great, except for there's no tax treaty between the United States and Dubai. So then YouTube will automatically withhold 30%. So you're now paying 30% tax, even though you're going to a quote zero tax. So we have to kind of look at how you're making your money. Now, if that person was a coach or a consultant and those individual paid directly, then you could potentially look at Dubai, but then it's how are you getting paid? Because a lot of people use things like Stripe, PayPal, and popular platforms, but those platforms aren't available in every single country around the world. So then where are you doing your banking? So it does become a little bit of a web, and it sounds like it's really confusing, but it's not when you kind of know the little important things. And so the one would be, how do you get paid? And then if they're paying you directly, you don't really need to worry so much about that tax treaty. But if you're getting paid by a business or a company like Amazon, YouTube, and things like that, then you need to consider that, or you need to set it up where you have more than one company, so that Amazon or YouTube pays you into a company within the United States, but that company is then owned by a company outside. When you get to doing that, though, you need to be making a fairly large amount of money to make it worth opening two companies. Even if you're in a no-tax country, you still have to file, right? The government still wants to know where this money is kind of coming and going, and so it's not.
What would you define as a fairly decent amount of money to make it worth it?
I think with that type of strategy, you probably need to be around $500,000.
Okay. This segment is sponsored by Rockbox Fitness Franchising. Take control of your destiny and join the boutique fitness revolution with Rockbox Fitness. If you're ready to make a real impact in your community and own your own business that empowers people to achieve their best life, then Rockbox is the opportunity you've been looking for. They provide comprehensive support from site selection, upfit, training, and turnkey marketing, so you can open your studio with confidence and a strong recurring revenue member base. Visit rockboxfitness.com and click on franchise opportunities to learn more about this exciting venture in the fast-growing boutique fitness industry. It's time to turn your passion for fitness and for business into a thriving venture. You collect the money and process the money in this second country.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're living in America, how do you get the money back to America? Or how do you access that money to live your lifestyle in America?
Well, then you have to pay yourself as either a shareholder or an employee. Most times it's best as an employee. And then you would just do like automatic bank transfer or lots of places have like debit cards that you can then use, but then you track as you are paying yourself. And then depending upon where you live, how much you're paying yourself, then that's where your personal taxes come in.
Personal taxes for the country that you're living in, or for the country?
The country that you live in.
So let's make this really clear. So let's say company's doing $500,000, and let's say you have expenses of 200, like legit expenses of 200,000. So you've netted 300,000 for that business. You can't just pay yourself a salary as an employee, 300,000 living in Florida or somewhere, and not pay taxes on the 300,000, can you? Or can you?
No, because that's now personal tax.
Okay.
So you would have, if let's just go with the Dubai situation. So you would say you paid 9% tax in Dubai, and then you would have all that money left. Now, if you had to pay yourself all of it, you kind of want to think like you're saving some, yes, but ultimately, if you're paying yourself then 300,000 and you're living in Florida, that's personal income, and you're paying taxes on that full 300,000.
Federal income tax on the 300,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now there's ways too a little bit that your company can give you some perks and take care of that, so you don't have to pay yourself that full amount.
Sure.
Car, phone, laptops, things like that. I mean, some people even sell their homes to their corporation and then rent it back from the corporation. So there's so many things that can be done. And it's just looking first at what's important, where is the person at, and the first step would be to reduce those corporate taxes, because we can't really, until we do that, we can't reduce our personal taxes.
Sure.
Right? Unless you want to move abroad, and then we would look at countries where they have a very low or no personal income tax rate as well. Some people want to do that, some people don't.
Gotcha. And is it like the Puerto Rico rule where if you spent 181 days in Dubai, and if there's no personal income tax, you could spend the other 179 days in America and not pay any tax?
People use that number of days, and it's not quite that black and white. It's an easy way to remember it, thinking that's where I'm spending the majority of my time. But just because you spend the majority of time, the government, they're tricky.
Sure.
And they'll look at, well, do you still, with using your example, do you still have property in the United States? You have family, you have credit cards, you've got subscriptions to magazines. We think this is your primary residence, and so you're going to be paying taxes here. And so it's just not a number of days. And then you have to think too, when you get into those residencies, because you can have multiple residencies, but you're always a tax resident somewhere. And it's not necessarily just where you spend the most amount of time. Because if we look at the digital nomad life, people who spend 2-3 months in one country, they move to another, And I've had people, they said, well, I don't need to because I don't actually live anywhere. That's not true. Yeah. You may not actually live somewhere, but if you're a digital nomad like that, moving around, then your taxes come back to your citizenship home country. Because no matter what, you have to be filing and potentially paying taxes somewhere in the world. Depending upon. So there's residency where you can have a residency permit, and maybe you need to spend a week out of the year or 2 weeks out of the year in that country. You're not a tax resident, but that's the minimum to maintain that residency. And then you can also have citizenship and get a passport and never spend a day there ever.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Let's talk, because I've been asking these different questions. Let's talk about the misconceptions. And, there's all kinds of junk on the internet and
Oh, yeah.
people on Instagram that don't know what the hell they're talking about. So, what are the misconceptions around this type of strategy?
The common one is it's illegal.
Yeah.
Offshore corporations, offshore banking, it's all illegal. It's, mafia, whatever. And I'm like, no, it's not. Because if you look at all these big companies like Amazon, like Google, like Facebook, Alphabet, all of them, it's the structure they have. Now, there are ways to do things illegally, but you don't even have to leave the country if you want to do it
Yeah.
illegally. Like, just don't
Exactly.
pay taxes.
Certainly.
You'll get caught. You'll, tax. There's a difference between tax evasion and tax kind of diversifying and avoiding. Tax avoidance, legal if done properly. Tax evasion, not legal. So
Yeah.
in situations, no matter where you go, there's still people think, oh, I don't have to file, I don't have to keep receipts, I don't have to keep paperwork, and that's not true. You're still going to be filing. Government, no matter what, wants to know where your money is, and I also think as a business owner, I want to know where I'm spending my money too. Where is the money coming in from? Maybe I need to focus more on those projects, widgets, whatever it may be. And then where's money going out? Can I cut back? Can I save? Or should I be spending more in certain areas? And so you still have to have an accountant. You still have to be filing. And it's not illegal because many corporations and just many millionaires and billionaires, I mean, that's what they do. But you don't have to be a millionaire or billionaire to do it. It just gets kind of more complicated. If all of a sudden somebody's like making 100 million and they decide, okay, I'm going to diversify now, then that's a lot to do. But if you start out earlier and as you're growing, as you're expanding, and then starting another business, you just kind of add to it and build out kind of like that web of all your assets and protection and where things are. But we basically recommend that your company should not be in the country that you live in, and you should have bank accounts in numerous countries outside of where you live and where your company is
And why
is
is
the ideal.
and why is that? Why bank accounts outside of where you live or where your companies are?
For protection from the government, from frivolous lawsuits. And I mean, my big thing was when I really started to do this instead of just personally, but as a business, was through the pandemic when we saw the types of things that the governments were doing. And prime example of that was with Canada, who was threatening people, if you don't get vaccinated, we're not going to renew your passport, or we won't give you a passport, because people think that they own their passport. You don't own your passport. That passport is owned by your government, and you don't have a right to it. They say it's a privilege for you to have it. And if you don't have a passport, you can't travel anywhere. You're stuck where you are. And then with the banking, there was that trucker protest that was going on, and the government froze people's bank accounts for protesting and people that were donating to the protest. So if the government now freezes your bank account, how do you pay your bills? How do you buy food? How do you pay your mortgage, your car payment, all the things that you need to do? Hire a lawyer to deal with this. And now I know there's some people saying, well, I'll never protest, or, that's
Sure.
not going to be me. Great. What about if your bank gets hacked and now everything's just kind of frozen because everything's shut down within the bank? Which could happen. I mean, you'll eventually get access to your money, but again, what is it going to be? Just a couple days? Is it going to be a week? What may it be? Or identity theft.
Yeah.
Somebody steals your identity, and then you have to go through the whole process of doing that. So at least having multiple bank accounts, and there's online banking. Every place has cards that they give you, so you'll be able to access it, but it just gives you the opportunity to have money kind of no matter what happens in one place. You have access to money in other places to pay bills, buy groceries, and do things that you need to do.
That's really smart. And obviously, these banks that you're looking at or you have accounts in, these are in more developed nations, very stable nations, I would imagine. Because sometimes, if I
Yeah.
understand this correctly, sometimes the not always. I mean, Dubai is obviously super stable, but sometimes the tax havens are not always the most stable and developed countries. And so you would want to maybe make money there, or at least have the money processed there, but then move that money to a very stable, first world country, so that banking system is shored up.
That's right. Absolutely. It's a great way to do it. And then even with one, if you're kind of like, it's like, I'll just use Belize for an
Yeah,
example. You'd really want to be careful with Belize. But even if you had a bank account there and you had a few $1,000s in it, as a just in case, is there a risk that that money is going to disappear? It's possibly, right? I mean, there's never zero risk. I mean, we've had banks go bankrupt in North America.
sure,
It
sure.
happens, right? But at least, if that was the one where you're like, okay, it's the easiest one for me to get an account in. I travel to Belize. I like it. I'll have a few $1,000s as a just in case. Then that's great. You can also look at some of these online banks, which are easy to start with, but you don't want to be keeping a lot of money within them. But like Wise, Revolut are ones too for people if they're kind of okay. I'm just starting out. I'm going to start, a few $100 a month. I can put in there $1,000 a month maybe for a while and just have a bit in there. That's at least a great start, because then you have money outside that you can use anywhere. And I use Wise a lot because I
Okay.
travel a lot. It's great for currency exchange, to transfer money from one account to another. And so that's one that anybody can just go on, sign up for online, and start using.
Cool. Super cool. This segment is sponsored by Beamlight Sauna Franchising. Are you looking to take control of your destiny and own your own business? Do you want a great brand in a rapidly growing market? Well, Beamlight Sauna is a nationwide health and wellness franchise with amazing opportunities in select markets. You can bring the power of infrared sauna and red light therapy to your community while you build a thriving business. Beamlight Sauna offers support that includes site selection, build out, even pre-launch programs and turnkey marketing, so you can open your studio with a large recurring revenue member base. To learn more about business ownership and franchise opportunities in the fast-growing health and wellness space, go to beamlightsauna.com. That's BEEM lightsauna.com, and click on franchise opportunities to learn more. As you've built different companies in different countries, and you talked about the employee behavior, are you also studying the consumer behavior? Is consumer behavior of that particular local market? Because that's always unique too, let
Absolutely.
alone, yeah. So talk about that if you could, please.
Well, then you have to look at, again, that service or widget that you're providing. And just because something may be popular, let's say in North America, you're offering a service or a product, and it's doing great in North America, and you want to expand to Mexico or Europe or somewhere else. You really need to do some market research, because what is popular in one country may not be popular at all, or not even wanted in another one. And so you might end up, if you really want to be within a certain market or country, then you might want to look at what's going on there first. Don't think of kind of what you want to do. It's what are they doing? What are they using? What's really selling and making things work in one, because they can be completely different. And consumerism in some countries it's not like it is in North America. There's other places where they're more family time, food, dinners, spending time with friends and doing things, not so much shopping,
Buying
buying
things.
widgets.
Leading a real high quality of life. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. um, all right, and then I guess last question: the pandemic. If you've got businesses spread all over the place, you've got accounts spread all over the place, you've got different um, visas or passports. Like,
Mhm.
how did you navigate the pandemic?
The pandemic for me was not that big of a deal. I still
Okay.
traveled during the pandemic because I was residing in places and passports like, here's my passport, I can go there. It was really weird though, being in an airport and, there's like a dozen people in the
Yeah.
airport. That
Yeah.
was a bit weird. But again, a lot of things we do online, right? We can have
Yeah.
meetings online. We move money online to different bank accounts, paying things online. And so that being spread out didn't really affect me that much. And I was still able to travel, obviously not as much because I couldn't just go to places because of a business meeting or I wanted to travel or do things. But having residency and citizenship in multiple places made it a lot easier to travel. So I still traveled, I think at least once or twice a year through the pandemic. And I was first in Europe when it started. So
Wow.
we were getting kind of locked down quite early compared to North America, but
Yeah.
I was still able to travel, and that's again just another one of those benefits of having it, as well as opportunity, depending upon where it is, to invest in different stock markets, perhaps buy land, buy houses, where in some countries you can buy a condo or an apartment, but you can't buy a house because you can't own the land. But
Mm.
if you're a citizen, then you can. So there's an investment things with it as well as travel, work, the healthcare system. If you're a resident and you're living somewhere in another country, you have access to that healthcare system or potentially free education as
Mm.
well. Some countries give university free for their citizens. So there's many perks with it. The only thing that you kind of have to be careful of too is some countries have mandatory military service.
Mm.
So are you still in that age group? Are your children in that? Now, sometimes you can kind of get out of it because if there's a conflict of interest between the two countries of,
Sure.
you can't do military service because you're also a citizen of another, but that's other legal things. But just to keep that into consideration as well. And then how much time you have to spend if you do for residency in countries. So the more you get, it can get a little bit more complicated because you
Sure.
have to be, especially with residency, citizenship, not, you don't have to spend time in countries.
Yeah. Interesting. Hadn't thought about healthcare and education and all the other things that we kind of take for granted, but I can see there's benefits to other countries, and some other countries have way better healthcare, at least more
Oh, yeah.
streamlined healthcare than, yeah. Interesting.
And free
Um,
education, right? You think if you move
yeah,
somewhere, if you've got healthcare, your kids go to university for free, you're not paying for your healthcare. And some places, though, their taxes might be a little bit higher. But if you,
sure.
again, kind of weigh that, it's like, okay, well, my percentage wise, I'm paying maybe higher in tax, but I'm not paying healthcare. My kids can go to university for free. And you add up all those other benefits. And it's like, well, I'm actually saving money, or I can afford more and have a better quality of life um, than
Especially if you keep,
where a person's at now.
especially if you keep that whatever income in that particular country
Yes.
lower, than, yeah, makes sense. All right, couple last questions. So my listeners know that I'm a big reader. I love to just consume business books, biographies. Is there a book that you've read that when you set it down, you you put it down, and Sally, you said, I'll never think about this again the same way. Like, I can't unsee something now. This has been really insightful, or just, had a great positive effect on you.
Oh my goodness, there's so many. I mean, the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People
Sure.
is one, and then one really recently is Dr. Joe Dispenza
Mm.
um, about change. And I have it. I just saw it this morning, and I was just
Sure.
looking at it. What is it?
That's
Change your
fine.
habits. Change your mind. Change your habits. Change your habits. Change your
Okay.
mind.
We'll find it and
Something
put it in
like that.
we'll put
Yeah.
it in the show notes then. Yeah. Dr.
And
Joe Dispenza.
it's a really good one. I mean, I don't want to get into talking about it because then I'll just talk about it. But
Sure.
it really is about mindset and how, if you change your mindset and we learn things, how anything is possible. And it's even people listening here, right? Like, If they would have thought, oh, offshore corporations are illegal and it's just drug dealers and mafia and things like that, it's not true, and it's a way that's doing it, and that's why people in that we know of, like Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and things like that, why they're making so much money is because they're paying very little taxes, and as a percentage wise, they're paying like next to nothing. And so it's frustrating that kind of the middle class is paying substantially more percentage wise than people who are making a lot more money. And one time I read that Jeff Bezos actually got a tax refund because of a few things, the way he did his taxes. And it was completely legal, but
Sure.
it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's learning to play within their rules.
I would say, don't hate the player, hate the game. Don't hate the player, hate the game. And then this one's a little different, but you've lived this. You've lived a different life, right? You've traveled abroad. You have different residencies, citizenships. We get to the end of your life, and you've lived this beautiful, rich life, and we're at your funeral, and somebody is looking down, or you're looking down, and somebody's reading your eulogy. Loved ones reading your eulogy, and they can only say 3 words. Now, they don't have to make a sentence or a phrase, but they just need to pick 3 descriptors that describe the life that you've lived. What 3 words do you hope they choose when describing your life?
Live, love, laugh.
Simple but beautiful. Simple but beautiful. And then second to last question, if you were to wave a magic wand tonight, and you've seen many, I think you've been to 45 countries or something. You've traveled a lot.
I think more than that now.
More than that. Yeah. So let's say 50 countries or more. Mm-hmm. And so you've seen a lot, and you've seen the world and how it works, and the good and the bad and the ugly. If you could wave a magic wand tonight and make one change to the way the world is, the way people act, the way people are, they think, whatever it is, if you could wave a magic wand, when we wake up tomorrow, how would the world be different according to Sally?
Oh, it would be so different. There's so many ways that I want to answer this question.
Sure.
I've often, I'll put it this way. I mean, obviously everybody wants like peace in the world and things like that. I've often said, I wish there was a way that we could make it mandatory for people around 20-ish, 25-ish. So either like kind of before university or maybe just getting out of university, mandatory that they have to go live in a foreign country where they don't speak the language for 2 years. Because then we realize, how much propaganda every country gets. And so some people are going to be offended, but yes, America, you get propaganda. Sure. Canada gets propaganda. At least Russia and China, they know that they get propaganda.
Sure.
That's the big thing. But you really realize, like I've learned through all my travels, my opinions and my beliefs are nothing. They are not right, but they are not wrong. They're just an opinion. Because if I was taken as a 2-year-old, let's say, and, moved to China or Russia or Saudi Arabia or whatever, my thoughts and my beliefs would be completely different. Because in part, they're not really mine unless you really question them. Because I think and believe a lot of things because that's what I was told growing up. My parents, my grandparents, my school, my environment made me think and believe certain things. And so often I like to ask people, why do you think that? Why is that? And some of the best conversations I have are very strong conversations with people, though, who can say, well, it's because of this. And they give their reason, not because it's true, because it's the way it is. Like that, that annoys me so much. Yeah. And to really question, like even I do that to myself. Why do I think this? Why do I believe this? And sometimes it's just because I saw some stuff on TV or the news or things. And, just because we read it doesn't mean it's true. Yeah. And so I think if we were forced to live in a different culture, a different language, which brings the whole struggle of moving to a whole new level, it really broadens our horizons. It makes us more open. It gives us more empathy, gives us more respect, and makes you realize that I don't care where you're living. You are not living in the best country in the world because there is no best country in the world. it may be best for you, the way that you like the things that you like to do, but there is no best country. They all have crap and problems and things going on. And so we have to work within it. So to be looking down at other people or countries, it's not right, because it's kind of that you don't know what's going on behind closed doors of somebody's house. Oh, they had the perfect marriage, they had the perfect family, and then something horrific happens.
Yeah.
And it's the same with countries and everything. So yeah, I think I would make some type of law that people would have to move for 2 years to a foreign country where they don't speak the language. I think the world would be a much better place if that happened.
I've done over 100 episodes and asked that question. I think every single podcast. I've never heard that type of answer, which is really, really cool. I can't remember the author I should cite for this, but the quote is, "We question every belief except for those we hold most dearly and those we never question at all." Which really, we should be questioning those the most. The ones we hold most dearly, like those ones we should challenge nonstop. Hey, most important question is, if people want advice from you, if they want to follow you, connect with you, how would they do that?
So my website is globalcitizenlife.org, so .org. And most of my social media is the Global Citizen Life Consultant. So it's a bit of a long name, but if you go to the website, all the links are there for all of our social media. We have a podcast as well. So probably the easiest would be through the website.
Super cool. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Sally, thank you so much. This has been a different but really enlightening episode and interview. I really appreciate it. I'm grateful for you coming on today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me and allowing me to share.
You bet. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.